Hey gamers, welcome back to the channel. Today in DC Dark Legion, we're going to be talking about Nightwing, the newest character in the game. We did do quite a bit of testing during a stream a couple days ago. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link up to it right over here if you want to check it out. Spent like 3 hours or so on testing the guy out. In this video, we're going to take a look at his kit. We're going to talk about stat priorities, where I feel he's best as far as ranking. What's the minimum number of stars you need to get him to for him to be useful? How does he compare to Deathstroke? We got a lot to talk about here, so let's get into it. All right, and welcome back. All right, let's talk about Nightwing. I think the two questions I see the most are, number one, is he worth it? And number two, how does he compare to Deathstroke? So we're going to get to all of that. But first, let's just talk about his kit. He's finally in the game. Super excited. I like him overall. But let's take a look at his kit. And then also, while we look at his kit, let's talk about stat priorities for him. All right, this first skill here, he flips over an enemy with the lowest HP, dealing physical damage. So he's a physical damage dealer. He's going to do a certain percentage of damage based on his attack. So attack's going to be the number one stat. He's untargetable during the leap, which is pretty cool. This ability here, upon each attack, Nightwing gains one stack of 5.5% crit up for 10 seconds. So we're going to see that crit rate go up. So that's going to be another stat we need to focus on. So attack and crit rate, that's stackable up to 5 times. This ability here, whenever Nightwing's basic attack deals crit damage, again, crit rate being important to increase crit damage. He deals additional physical damage equal to a certain percent of his attack. And then he also gains 5 additional energy. So he's got some energy gain in his attack. His global skill here gives all champions some attack as well as crit rate for assassins. When we look at his ultimate here, so he strikes an enemy in front of him, dealing physical damage based on his attack. He also gains one stack of 10% crit amp, which increases the amount of damage that he does with his crit, and 5% crit rate up. So tons of crit rate up for each Bat Family member ally present. So Bat Family, I think the biggest problem with Bat Family, we talked about it before, is there's no healer. So when I did the testing, if you haven't seen it again, I'll put a link up to it over here for the stream. We spent quite a bit of time testing him in different game modes. I didn't put a bat-specific family together because prior to the stream I was doing some testing. They just don't do well. We need a healer in there, not an all-out damage team. That's pretty much, everybody's pretty much damage in there, except for Red Robin. He even does some damage, but he's the only tank there. So it's just not a very efficient team. But I also think that lends him to be a very plug-and-play character across multiple teams. So I think you're going to be able to use him in quite a few different configurations. If this attack defeats the target, then he's going to immediately strike another enemy with the lowest HP, dealing damage equal to a certain percentage of his attack. We all know that. And then he's untargetable during the leap again, which is nice. And then prioritizes the champion with the lowest HP in auto mode. So when you start comparing him to Deathstroke, he focuses on enemies with the lowest HP. Deathstroke focuses on enemies with the highest attack. I wonder how well they do. I wonder what kind of team we can put together with both of them. Both high level on a team. You've got one going after high attack, one going after low HP, and then just kind of build a team to keep them up. That would be fun to play around with. I think there's a lot of testing still need to be done. We've only had Nightwing out for a few days. So there's a bunch of testing, different types of team comps and everything I think that still needs to be had. So like I said, when we talk about stat priorities and we're talking about force, you really want to focus on attack, crit rate up, and percentage-based stats first. So like this ability right here, Nightwing crit damage increased by 3%. That's going to be good. This right here, a percent-based decrease in crit resistance, I think is pretty cool as well to get to. Nightwing's attack increase here by 2%. I think this is a percent increase in his attack as well. So focus on percent-based attacks first, and then stats first, and then go get the attack and all that stuff. That's just flat stats. But that percent is going to do more for you than the flat stats quicker. So focus on those. Attack, crit damage, and crit rate, and then kind of fill in everything else as you go along. There's also one here I think is really good, your physical penetration as well. A good 2% stat improvement there to increase physical damage overall. All right, so when we talk about his legacy piece, this is what I put on the Tectonic Disruptor. This increases crit damage as well as crit rate, so it lends very nicely to his kit. This is also good for PvP. I feel that one of his strengths is going to be PvP in Metabraw. And this right here, Severe Wound, is a debuff that reduces healing for the enemy team. So that just fits in very, very nicely. When you take a look at other legacy pieces that would work well, I think T-Sphere Weakness as well, because that's got crit damage and crit rate as well as an additional increase to crit damage, which I think is nice. If you don't have his Legacy Plus weapon, let's just go ahead, take a look at his Legacy Plus weapon here really quick. Over here in House of Secrets. Boom, here we go. So crit damage, attack, very similar to the two we just looked at. Increases attack by 15%, gains 10% physical penetration. Again, we talked about that stat, that's important. Let's see, when dealing damage with his ultimate or the follow-up strike, if Nightwing crit rate is above 100%, again, really want to focus on that crit rate. Every additional 1% grants 1 more % physical penetration. I think that's awesome. You got this recharge down here. Increases crit amp by 20% upon defeating an enemy, restoring 10 energy. So nice energy gain. There's a lot of similarities between Deathstroke and Nightwing. Their attacks, defeating an enemy and then going to another, energy gain, their stat priorities. There's a lot of similarities there. Is one better than the other? When we take a look at, I just compared, I have a 5 white star Deathstroke, so very limited testing here. And then I tested him against my 5 white star Nightwing. They seemed fairly comparable. I felt like Nightwing was just a little bit better, a little bit more survivability. Also, I think he's better earlier on than Deathstroke is. Deathstroke requires quite a bit of investment. But let's talk about that really quick. When we take a look at the performance of Nightwing in the combat cycle we did, I had him at 0 stars. We tested him all the way along. So at 0 stars, he was at 2.2 million. That's the max damage that he did. Well, average damage that he did. When I took him up to 5 white stars, he was doing 4.1 million damage. So that's quite a bit of a jump from the 2.2. So almost double the damage. So my initial thought was 5 white stars was going to be the minimum for him. But then when you go from 5 white stars to 2 blue stars, he jumps from 4.1 million damage to 5.5. So that's going to be my minimum recommendation for him. If you're going to pull for Nightwing, get him to at least the 2 blue, because you see that huge damage boost. Now, we did see, as we continue to level him up in the blue stars to sort of 3 stars and 5 stars, there wasn't much of a damage increase, just a few 100,000. That was it. The next huge bump was going to 1 purple. That 1 purple, we got to 7.8 million damage. At that point, also, we are starting to see that he's doing much better in Training Simulator, so that works out very well. Again, I think he's going to be great in Metabrawl as well, so we're going to take him through some of those battles as well. But let's go ahead, jump over to Metabrawl. Let's see who we can find here, just to show him off a little bit here. Let's see, do we have any stronger teams here? So we'll jump into here. Let's run him through a fight. So the 1 purple is going to be my recommendation. So on the graphic that Cope put together, there's a minimum to pull him at and then stop. But there's a recommendation for you to push just a little bit further if you can, and then either stop or just go heavily onto that hero, depending on how far you want to take him. So for him, again, 2 blue is going to be the minimum. Get him up to 1 purple is going to be the recommendation to really use him. That's when he becomes usable. So he does require some investment, similar to Deathstroke, but I don't feel he requires as much of an investment. And when you take a look at the characters themselves, they're both assassin-type classes. So the question is that just something that's inherent to the assassin class? Maybe it is. Maybe they just require more investment in order to make them good. So let's take a look at the stats here. Pulling in here. Look at it. He pulled in. Oh, man, they took out my Constantine fast. But he pulled in 1.1 million damage, which is pretty good. So I think he's going to do well here. He's done well for me to continue to climb. I was doing some Grandmaster battles, and he was doing pretty well. But let's also take a look at Training Simulator. So we go out here, take a look at Training Simulator. In Training Simulator, he does some very consistent damage. Let's go ahead and start this battle here. He's pulling in typically around 1 million damage, but he's helped me. Just by that, he's helped me get through multiple Training Simulators, so I think he works well here. So when we take a look at his kit, the big bosses, the single target bosses, his kit really doesn't have the ability to shine because he's not taking anybody out. His kit needs to take somebody out so he can jump to somebody else and take them out as well, so you can take out multiple characters with one ult. Let's see what he pulled in here. Usually it's around 1 million damage. Yep, so it's going to be low to mid 1 millions on this, at least for where I have him right now. And you saw a little bit early where I had him as far as force. Not a ton of investment in force, but 3 stars and a little investment in force right there. So this is not the best combat cycle for him, but we always take these characters through combat cycle. So we're going to go ahead and take this team through it. We'll go ahead and fast forward just to show you the end results. Again, when I was going through Devastator with him the other day, 1 purple, I was pulling in around 7.8 million damage. This boss has mobs, but you can't take the mobs out. You just continually do damage on him. It's not like his kit, again, has the opportunity to shine. All right, let's go ahead and fast forward through the fight and take a look at the ending damage. All right, so we just wrapped this up. Nightwing dropped. He fell at about the 30-second mark. These are also phase 2 combat cycles, so they're much more difficult than the phase 1 trials and everything that we were doing. So it's quite a bit more difficult, but still, we pull in almost, oh, look at that, over 30. I love Constantine for this one. He does the most damage here. But I brought in 5.5. If he would have stayed up the last 30 seconds, he would have been able to pull in quite a bit of damage. But this isn't the best combat cycle for him. But there's an example of some of the damage that he does for you. You're going to want a better team for this specific one. Again, when it comes to combat cycle, I think his best is going to be Merciless. All right, tier list discussion. Let's talk about where I think he falls on the tier list. I want to say he's fairly on par with Deathstroke. I think he could be a little bit better. So I'm going to at least put him at an A+ with Deathstroke. Again, he's only been out for a few days, so there's a lot of testing that still needs to be done. We need to test him in a bunch of different teams as well. Though I feel that he's very plug and play, so we should have that flexibility to do that. So by the time the June tier lists come around, I will have a better idea of where I'm going to slot him. But right now, knee-jerk reaction is A+. We'll see if that sticks or not. All right, now down to the final 2 questions. Number 1, is he worth it? And number 2, should you skip him? When it comes to him being worth it, that's the question of the whole video, right? Is he worth it? I feel he's worth it. You can take a look at the results from a poll that I did on the stream as well, and the stream felt he was worth it. Based on the limited testing that we did, should you skip him? I don't recommend you skip people in the bleed too often. The characters. The only character that I've recommended you skip is Deathstroke because of how much investment that he needs. Nightwing needs higher investment as well, but not as much as Deathstroke, in my opinion. So I don't think that he's one that you want to skip. Also, when you take a look at Realm of Fate, you don't want to skip too many characters because you're going to limit the teams that you can create in Realm of Fate. So at least get him to the 2 blue stars. I think you're going to be happy with him. I think he's got the potential to be one of the best Metabraw characters because whereas Deathstroke is based on attack doesn't change. HP does. So as your enemy team loses HP, his ult becomes more and more beneficial, taking out more and more enemies. So I don't know. I think he's much more beneficial there. All right, everybody, that is what I had for you. Very curious on your thoughts. What do you think? Did you watch the stream? Have you had time to really kind of play around with him and test him? Anybody out there who's got a highly invested Deathstroke and has compared him to a highly invested Nightwing, let me know. I would love to hear from you. Let us know in the comment section. All right, everybody, as always, I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.